So let's start. Again, good morning. So we are now on the week 4 for this course, for the summer class. So for this topic or for this discussion, tignan muna natin yung directives, yung last discussion natin, which is ito yun, itong Angular, TypeScript, and Cordova. Tignan muna natin siya. Discuss natin ngayon itong for week 4. Then, next week, ito na yung last discussion natin. Patapos na kayo, konti na lang. Then, for the last week or pang-anim na week, pag-create nyo na ng final project. So, let's discuss or have a consultation later for your final project. So, our topic for today is understanding Ionic. Let's now take a deeper look at what makes up the foundation of an Ionic page or application. So, these are the basic Ionic page structure. So, each Ionic page is formed from three base files, such as the HTML. HTML file defines the components that are displayed in the application, in the page. The second base file, the SAS or the SASS file, which defines any custom visual styling for those components, or basically the CSS. And the last base file is a TypeScript file, which provide the custom functions for those components. Again, each Ionic page has or have three base files. We have the HTML file, SAS or the SASS or the CSS file, and the TypeScript file. HTML file, ito yung components within our application. Within the Ionic page, SASS file or the SAS file is the the styling of our components from the HTML. Then the TypeScript file will be the function, how those components will work, or kumbaga parang brain ng ating application, ng ating page. Tandaan yung tatlong basic or base files for Ionic page structure. So let's discuss first the HTML structure. So unlike with the traditional HTML file, for the Ionic, you do not need to include the tag and elements like importing CSS file. Diba kung matatandaan nyo on your previous course na gumamit kayo ng HTML, para mag-connect yung design natin, si CSS file on our HTML file, lalagay tayo ng line of code or ng directory or i-import natin si CSS file within the HTML file. So, kay Ionic, hindi na siya ganun. You also do not include the body or yung ganito. Kaya nang ganito kay Ionic. So, wala na din siyang, ano po ba, on how we begin an HTML file. Kung matatandaan nyo to, doc type HTML. So, this is the traditional tags or elements HTML file natin. With the Ionic, the HTML structure, hindi na natin kailangan include those tags and elements. So, the content of the HTML file or structure are rendered within our application container. So, we do not need them. We just define the actual components that will be shown to the user. And these components are a mixture of traditional HTML tags and a custom tags that are used to define the Ionic components. So ito yung example. Here's an example of an Ionic page markup. So you can see the markup is a blend of a standard HTML, such as itong P. Diba, these tags still used, ginagamit or nasa traditional HTML structure din siya. So, it is combination of the Ionic components, Ionic tags, and the HTML or the standard HTML tags. Ionic tags, alin po dito? Lahat ng may prefix na ion. So, we have the ion header, ion navbar, ion content, and etc. So, here's the code for the HTML structure. Once we run it, ito yung magiging output niya. The title, the Ionic blank, the world is your oyster, such as the content, and the paragraph. If you get lost, such as yung link, this docs, when we click this word, it will jump to another site or another page. So that is for the HTML structure. For the ion content, Ionic content, wait lang. For the Ionic content, one of the Angular's feature is the ability to extend the vocabulary of the HTML file to include the custom tags. The Ionic framework leverage the capability and has created an entire set of mobile components. So ito yung example lang components. The example the Ionic component example are the ion card, ion segment button, ion item sliding. So you can explore the different components of the Ionic on the Ionic documentation. Yung nasa website nila, yung sinasearch natin. Ito. Ionic. So lahat ng components na pwede nyo magamit, makikita nyo lang siya dito. Sa documentation na to. Ito yung tinatawag nating documentation. So for a complete, again, for a complete summary of the Ionic component library, you can see or you can search the Ionic documentation. So all of the Ionic components, again, have the prefix ion, I-O-N, so that they are easy to spot in the markup. Para ma-identify natin alin ba yung si HTML tags, si standard HTML tags, and this Ionic component. So, just like standard HTML tags, Ionic components also accept various attributes to define their settings, such as settings their ID value or defining additional CSS classes. But Ionic components are also extended through additional attributes like ion item options side left. Kumbaga, within that line of code, you can add na, kumbaga, sa CSS, ang tawag natin ay inline CSS. Or within the line of code, nilalagay na natin yung styling natin for that specific component. Or using Angular directives, button, ION button, color equals dark. So, that is the Ionic component. As we build our sample applications later, you will become more familiar with the Ionic component library. Excuse me. So we are now done with the HTML structure and the HTML tags and the Ionic component. So we'll now understand the SCCS file. So the visual definition of an Ionic application is defined by CSS. However, this CSS is actually generated by the SASS or the SAS, or it means the syntactically awesome style sheets. So it provides several advantages over writing CSS directly. So you can refer to this variable instead of directly assigning the color. So now if we had to change our color, we only have to do it in one location and not across multiple files. Kapag kasi inline CSS, di ba, in a particular line of code niya siya ilalagay. So what if gusto ko gantong kulay sa gantong page, sa button. Ngayon ang button, sa lahat ng page or in multiple pages may button. So it means, isa-isahin mo pang babalikan si page para i-edit si kulay ng button. While on the SCCS file or the CSS file itself, you can just directly assign a particular styling on that specific variable. Gagawa ka lang ng variable for that component. So, typically the screens or the SCSS file is where you will define any page of the CSS. For example, yun nga, if you need to have a slightly different button style for a login screen, by defining it in the associated .scss file, you keep the associated elements packaged together in a more logical fashion. Check natin. Ito yung, for example, on this application, yung sinasabi natin, ito. Kita niyo ba? Wait. Ito yung .scss file. Dito natin i-edit yung ating styling for our application. Then, for any application-wide theming, so or for the whole application, that styling should be defined in the app.core.sccs files. Let's see if meron siya. This is for home. Ito, or app.component. This as SCSS file is for a wide or for the application-wide theming. Then kapag yung sa within the home or within the SRC then app kung anumang folder, this specific .scss file is for the home page HTML lang. Yan. So this includes the ability to declare variables like $sign, the company dash brand. So whatever the component behind or inside this variable, mag-appear siya in gantong kulay. So that is for the SCSS file. Question? May question po? Wala. Lastly, the TypeScript. So the last element needs to create an Ionic screen is associated with the TypeScript or the .ts file. So this is where all the Angular or TypeScript code to control the interaction of this page will be written. So the functions of your applications will be written on the .ts file or on the TypeScript file. So this file or the file will define any code modules we need to import for our screen to function. Typically, these would be components that we might need to program programmatically interact, like the navigating to a new screen or jumping into a new screen. Or Angular modules that offer functions like making an HTTP request, and also it will define the base component on what we see on the actual screen. As we need to add the functions to respond to user input, and that code will also be added into this file. If basic lang, hello world, basic output lang, walang function, walang process na mangyayari. So, on HTML file and CSS file lang kayo mag-edit. So, again, for TypeScript, this will the code will be inputted on the .ps file to function or for your application be functioning and responsive to the user's input. So this TypeScript code just defines that home page component and links it the template. We will be working a lot of TypeScript throughout our sample applications. So we will not go any further in exploring this element. Kasi as we go to our exercises or sample applications, we will understand the TypeScript. So you should have a better understanding of the three key elements that make up a single Ionic screen or Ionic page. Ano nga yung three elements or three basic or base file for the Ionic page? What are the three elements, three base file or basic file for Ionic applications or Ionic page? Anyone? Thank you, Maranan. It is the HTML file or the CSS or the SCSS and the TypeScript file. So let's move on to building our first actual Ionic applications. Second subtopic is building our Ionic to-do app. So we are finally ready to start creating our first Ionic applications. As not to break with the traditions, we're going to build the classic to-do list management applications. So you might wonder why it would be something that has been built so many times before. Part of the reason is that for many of you, some of you are building something familiar, and we'll let you begin to map how Ionic works to whatever language or framework you might be more familiar with. So another reason is that the do app has more complexity than simply printing out hello world on the screen. So on this application, our Ionic application will be doing the Ionic to do app. So dito mag-start yung ating exercises. So siguro you can open na your laptop. And communicate. Siguro meron naman yung group chat for your groups. Communicate to your team members. By team na lang yung pag-present ng exercise. So after these slides, I will be giving you a time, like an hour to finish or to do this activity. Open nyo muna yung laptop. Punta na kayo sa directory nyo, such as kung saan man nakasave yung folder nyo, CD desktop, CD Ionic, -project, create na kayo ng folder. So again, we'll be creating Ionic to do applications. So to get started, we need to create a new Ionic project and we will use the blank template as our basis. Sabay-sabay tayo. Kayo pala kasi para ma-explore nyo. Merong something tayong i-download as we go with this application such as the Cordova. As direktahan nga muna natin yung Angular and Cordova, yung part ng ating week 3. So install na lang din natin. Lalabas naman within .cmd kung ano yung kailangan natin i-install. Ano yun? Ha? Yan. So the first line of code is the Ionic start, Ionic, malaking I to do blank. So the CLI will begin downloading the various elements for the project. So such as the TypeScript components, the node modules, and finally the required Cordova components. So this process may take a few minutes. Again, it depends on your internet connection and the specifications of your laptop. If you have done the Ionic version 1 or Ionic development, you will notice that this process is a bit longer than before. So mapapansin nyo yan. And once all the packages have been downloaded, the CLI will then ask you if you want to link this application to your Ionic applications or dashboard. It depends kung ano yung magiging output sa atin. For now, we don't need to link our applications to the dashboard. And so, know muna natin, and we can always link our applications at a later date. So, open nyo CMD, access nyo na yung directory nyo, then Ionic start tayo, Ionic to do blank. So, ito yung expected output natin at the end of the discussion. Saan Google Meet? So, we'll be using Ionic Serve and some additional line of code for us to see kung ano ba yung itsura ng UI natin ng different platforms such as the iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. Na kasunod ba for the Ionic start? Or anyone na pwedeng mag-share screen? Kaya po naka-laptop. Kasi magdadalaw yung aking. I-delete ko na lang. Diba, ang laki. Kailangan natin ng malaking storage. Ala, wait. Nakakasunod ba dun sa Ionic start?
Sir, ayaw po nga sa akin yung command.
Pwede ka mag-share screen, tapos yun lang yung follow natin yung sa'yo.
Sige, wait lang.
Meron ba dito? Ay, hindi pa. Share screen ka na lang. Ayun. Communication.
Okay na po.
Oo.
So, ito po yung folder.
Wait lang. Lakin ko lang screen. Yan.
So, sabi niyo po kung ano nga pong command na ilalagay din.
Pasok ka muna. Sa desktop ba nakasave yung pinaka-folder mo?
Yes po. Okay na po, sir.
Nakapasok ka na?
na po.
Sige. Then, try mo yung Ionic start.
Ionic. Kasama po ba yung dollar sign?
Hindi na.
Ionic start.
Then, Ionic, malaking I. Again, ito yung start ng ating exercise by team to, by group.
Ano po?
Ionic.
Potaka.
Ionic, malaking I. Ionic, tapos number 2.
Ionic.
Start.
Start po. Tapos.
Ionic, malaking I. Type ko dito sa Ionic start, Ionic to do blank. Yan, tinay ko. Tapos yung mga acting team leaders, you can follow na din or sabay. Angular. Yes, sige. Okay na yung iba ha. Kahit team members na may laptop or kasi namang may laptop, sumabay na din to. Punta sa directory, then start this line of code, Ionic start, Ionic to do blank. Medyo matagal siya again, depending on the internet connection or the specs of our laptop. And okay lang naman yun, makakapag-intay naman. And after this line of code, explain ko lang, hanggang nag-iintay tayo. Ay, kita niya rin ba yung PowerPoint ko? Tsaka yung, PowerPoint. Kita niyo ba yung screen ko at tsaka yung kay Rich? At the same time, sabay? Or
hindi po, sir.
Hindi. Sige.
Yes po.
So, okay na po.
Okay na. Then, sige, explain ko lang next line of code. Wait lang. Nawala yung, sige, hindi na akong present post.
Ano ba po, sir? Sige, i-share ko na lang.
Hindi, share mo na lang ulit. Di ko na lang ipapresent yung screen ko. The next step, so since nag-start ay nag-create na tayo Ionic start, Ionic to do as a blank template. So next, you need to make sure you change the working directory to your newly created Ionic projects directory. Then you will be typing cd. Then yung file, yung project, Ionic to do. Malaking I. Pasok lang tayo doon. Type ko lang din. cd Ionic to do. Then nakapasok na tayo. The next one is adding our build platforms. Since the build platforms are now longer automatically added, we need to include them manually. So ano po yung code? The type ko dito, Ionic, Cordova, I think dito magkaka-error na kailangan natin i-install si Cordova at hindi pa na-install. Ionic Cordova platform at Android. Android. Wala. Yan. Ano nakalagay? Are you
How
sure?
recommend capacitor?
Ano? Antay. Basahin ko. About the integrator app. Na recommend capacitors to learn about. Yes. Parang dyan na mag-i-install si... Yan.
Error.
Action must be one. Ayun yung sa Cordova na. And or pumasok ka pa lang. Anong type mo job code?
Ano po? Ionic Cordova platform Android.
Lagay mo ito add. Ionic Cordova platform add Android. Click mo na lang yung arrow key, arrow up. Yeah, add Android. Anong error?
So Cordova CLI was not found on your path.
Sige, install natin yan.
Tiyata po, MPLI.
Okay, try mo. Hindi ko mabasa ng ayos. Cordova is not recognized as an airline. Tapos, run mo ulit yung Android. After nung sa Android, edi yung iOS naman. Ionic Cordova platform add iOS. Sa iba, kung meron kayong issue or problem as you type the line of code, chat nyo lang on this, chat nyo lang or open your mic for the concern. Goods na Rich, balik ka nga. Hintay.
Okay na po.
Then yung yung Android.
Pero ba?
Yan.
Add.
Yeah, hindi, hintayin lang natin yan. Nakakasabay po ba yung iba? May question? Or na-encounter na something? Kasi after this discussion, I will be giving you 1 hour to do the exercise as a team. Next dyan, arrow up na lang din. Palta mo ng iOS. So that platform, as we run or preview our application, makikita natin the UI on the different platforms. Okay na yung iOS?
Okay na po ata.
Last, so basically, for us to preview our application, we use Ionic Serve. For now, we'll be still using Ionic Serve with additional line. Type ko na lang, Ionic Serve --love.
Ano po sir?
Yan, nasa, yan.
Ionic Serve --love.
So, with that code, we'll take a quick look at what the Ionic blank or Ionic to do blank template looks like in our browser. So, although there is an index HTML, Yan. Although we have HTML file located inside our directory, we actually cannot open it directly in our browser. So instead, this file needs to be served from the actual web browser. So luckily, we do not need to upload this to an actual server, and the Ionic CLI has a command for us to spin up a local web browser and allow us to preview our applications. So the dash dash lab flag, so this will tell the server to create 3 copies of our Ionic application in the browser. So one will have the platform for the iOS, for Android, and Windows. So this will allow you to quickly preview the difference in the UI between the 3 platforms and provide a simpler way to test any CSS changes you might be applying to your project. So, yan.
Ito na po yung
Yan.
lumabas.
Pakita mo nga yung itong platforms. Click mo din yung Windows. Platforms, upper right. Yan. So, with the Ionic serve dash dash lab flag, we can see the different platforms. Ano ba yung UI natin for the different platforms? So, yun. Makikita natin. So, that is, again, for us to see those 3 platforms such as the iOS, Android, Windows, kailangan natin na i-install, of course, si Android, iOS, and Ionic serve tayo dash dash lab flag. Nakasabay po ba yung ibang team? Dapat parehas na kayo ng makikita or output. Okay na yan, Ana. Stop sharing na. Rich, thank you. Question po dun sa hindi nakasabay. Ayun, install mo lang yung Cordova. Grado. Pwede mong i-share yung screen mo. Meron ba nakalagay na code para ma-install mo yung Cordova? Yan. Yan yung code. Install mo yan, Mr. Grado. npm i-g, again, globally, i-install si Cordova. Ay, mali pala yung aking. Install mo muna po, Mr. Grado, yung Cordova. Then for our exercise, you can open our Google Classroom. Then access nyo yung ebook natin. Mga iba hindi pa alam na mayroon na ditong ebook on Google Classroom. Lahat ng discussion natin nandito lang. Sige po, thank you. Dito ko na lang pala siya i-open. Para then punta kayo on chapter 7. So nagawa na natin to sa Ionic Start, Ionic to do blank, CD Ionic to do, and adding our build platforms such as the Android and iOS, reviewing Ionic serve using the Ionic serve, ito, dash dash flag, flag. So ito yung magiging itsura niya. You will see the application on the iOS platform, Android, and Windows. And for our exercise, we'll be starting reading, analyzing from, starting from this subtopic, understanding the index HTML file. So, sa ginawa niyong Ionic to-do application, basahin niyo to, merong nakalagay dito, ika-copy-paste niyo lang yung code, then nakalagay naman kung saang file niyo siya ilalagay. Wait. Hmm. Wait lang. Wala pala siya dito. Yan, updating the page structure. Pero basahin nyo din yon yung kanina, yung nasa taas nitong subtopic na to. Yan. Ito yung expected output natin, or nyo, for this exercise. By team naman siya. Yan. Kung makikita nyo, itong add item code naman, ito yung basic template or yung output ng blank template. Itong add item, kumbaga, follow nyo lang itong line of code na nakalagay dito. Then, ito-paste nyo siya kung saang mang file, yung sinabi. Explore nyo siya, then as you go through this application, yan, add item, kumbaga makikita nyo na yung ginagawa yung application is with the function na. Follow nyo lang naman yung code. Pwede kayong mag-add item or when you click that button, ma-identify nyo kung ano yung mangyayari. Yan. Pwede kayong mag-save or delete. Again, follow nyo lang yung code. Siyempre, babasahin nyo. Hindi yung copy-paste lang talaga. Full swipe, gesture. Yun yung pinaka-output. Yan. Hanggang dito lang. So, kung ano yung nandito sa ebook na output, yun din dapat yung ipapresent nyo. From that blank template, nag-add kayo ng button or a clickable component, when you click add item, so mag-add siya on your Ionic applications. Kumbaga functioning, you can add, delete, save, based on the codes na i-follow nyo. So, hindi yung mga naka-wifi, hindi na lang tayo magli-leave ng Google Meet sa mga naka-data, makipag-communicate on your team kung anong gagawin. Sir, pagkatapos po ma-install ng Cordova, ano pong gagawin? Ito po, nasa messages natin, message section. After may install, yung Ionic Cordova platform, add Android naman. Sige, ilagay ko ulit. So again, lahat ng code, basahin nyo nandito lang sa ebook. So, hindi na tayo magli-leave ng Google Meet. Kung may questions, raise nyo lang dito. Not literally na question na kung anong ilalagay sa file, kasi you will explore this exercise, this application. Any question? Until siguro 11. If kaya naman, before 11, pwede kayo mag-present na. Okay po, kaya ba hanggang 11? Kaya.
Sir, ano po ang pipresent?
Yung application, yung sinumulan mo. Itong mga nandito, idudugtong nyo lang. Itong nanditong
Alin pong gagawin po, sir?
Opo. Kaka-paste nyo lang, identify nyo kung saan nyo ilalagay. Or in short, basahin nyo itong from yan. Kasi tapos na tayo dito. Ionic start, adding platforms, Ionic serve, tapos na. Ito yung magiging output natin. Yan. Then, analyze nyo, basahin nyo to from this topic hanggang sa summary. Then, dun nyo ma-identify yung nagiging output. Hindi ko po makita yung ebook. Nandito po siya on our Google Classroom. Punta ka ng classwork materials. Then, itong mobile app development with Ionic. Yan. Meron pa pong question? So, work as a team na. Then, I will be choosing one of the members on your team kung sino magpe-present. Download nyo na lang din to para mas mabilis yung makita yung content. Ano pang question? Ito yung maggawa ng additional or isa pang Google Meet as a team, as a group. Then share screen yung isa, explain or sabay-sabay niyong basahin muna itong nasa ebook. Okay? So, 11 or before 11, pwedeng mag-present. So, ilan bang groups kayo? Lalo pala, wait pala. Itong grouping sa, hindi yung sa,
Sir, hanggang saan yung gagawin doon sa ano? Ionic Dodo?
hanggang dito sa summary. Hindi ko tanda kung anong page yun. Not literally naman kung anong nakalagay dito. Kasi meron ditong in-explain lang yung line of code na mayroon on that different file. Parang I think dito siya mag-start. Yan, updating the page structure. Pero basahin nyo yung nasa taas. Kasi baka meron dong i-add sa line of code. Hanggang dito siya.
75.
Hindi, wait. hanggang kasi ang kailangan hanggang dito. Ang expected output ay ito. Hello? What? Yan. The expected output ang
Ano yun,
gagawin.
sir, pag pinalo simula doon sa page, magagawa yan.
Oo. Nakalagay naman kung saan nyo ipipaste or ikakopy-paste yung code sa ang file. Kung hindi makakopy, bawa, kinopy nyo to. Kasi yung nag-try ako on PowerPoint kapag kinakopy ko yung line of code, parang hindi siya nagpe-paste. Nakalagay ay iba yung output. Di i-type nyo na lang kung hindi man nagpe-paste. Okay? Yes, Perez, friends?
Sir, sorry ako kaka-join ko lang. Ano ga po yan by group?
Apo.
Ano
Okay.
pong group yan yung sa activity 3 po?
Oo, yun.
Okay, okay po. Sige, thank you.
Okay? So, yung mga nakadata po, pwede na pong mag-leave muna. Basta makikipag-communicate, do your part as a member. Huwag yung aasa na lang sa isa. Sabay-sabay kayong mag-analyze ng gagawin. Okay? Sa mga naka-wifi or acting leader ng team, dito muna kayo sa Google Meet. At kung naka-wifi man, para if you have questions, ma-raise nyo. Okay? Till 11.